Morning, morning, everybody. Michelle is here. Michelle is here on this Thursday, June 4th, 2026. Let me make sure I don't have any appointments today. Nope, everything looks good. All right, just finished my walk, and I decided to come on in and talk about a few things that's 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 going to really come back and bite a lot of us, but the damage has been done. It's hard to reverse certain things, and it's almost next to impossible to have these beliefs without considering why you have them. So we have a lot of we have billions upon billions of people talking online. We know that, billions. And so, that is a logistical nightmare, attempting how to navigate towards that, how to, filter out this and filter in that. And, it requires a bit of creativity, I would say, not to mention, to make sure the math does add up. But see, we started in a error pool, a mistake pool of information, and instead of attempting to resolve it, a lot of people just piled more misinformation, more mistakes, more errors on top of the errors that we started out with. And so that's where we are. We're just continually building and building. Well, actually burying ourselves. We're not advancing. We are devolving. We are, just piling junk on top of junk on top of junk. And so we always have this phrase, when I say we, I'm talking about humanity as a whole, where they say garbage in, garbage out. The garbage has been spewing out for decades, centuries possibly. I would say at least since the 1700s, and that's not long ago when you consider everything else. So here we are. So I just finished my walk on this. It's a bit of humidity in the air. Some of the trees, even though they're not fully blossoming, they're blossoming. They look really pretty, and I enjoy paying attention to that. Not to mention the little birds. I mean, some of the birds that I see are so small that it's easy to miss them. If you're not paying attention. So keep that in mind when you go out in nature. There are some small creatures, birds, you name it, out here also attempting to enjoy nature, enjoy the sun, and it all belongs to them too. It just doesn't belong to us. But I want to come through and say this not real quick, but just kind of start opening up this. Because we have so many people that are not reading. Okay, a lot of people are not reading, and they do not know how, they are not understanding and comprehending knowledge. Okay, they don't understand how to break it down, so to speak, and the way we were taught growing up. When we used to do book reports, remember that? I doubt that I'm sure that stopped decades ago, where you supposedly you read a book, and then you come back and you do your synopsis of what you read, what you comprehend, and then the teacher will know if you knew what the hell you were talking about, because the teacher knew the book inside out, up and down. And so I don't know if that wasn't a favorite of mine. I can tell you that right now, as I was being developed in school, that was not a favorite of mine. I did not want to read. I did not, and they used to have us reading out loud, in front of everybody in the class. I don't know how I sound. Okay, but I did manage to pass. I did have a speech impediment, so I knew I stuttered. I can remember one of the teachers was suggesting that I go to a speech class. I think they may have given me a note to give it to my mom, but keep in mind, my mom could barely read or write herself. So she probably disregarded all of that. So I had to learn how to develop my speech where you can understand me. And that took decades. Okay? So the sad thing is we have these so-called students, graduating from high school. And some of them can barely, they can barely read or write. Okay? A lot of them are very, they have a lot of fantasies and delusions going on in their minds, in their head, in their thoughts, because of the internet, because of video games, because of, especially the ones that were born during the internet phase. Those are the ones I'm addressing. They have not been taught how to properly formulate and understand, comprehend knowledge. They get on the social media platform, they say something that they may have picked up, like I said, may have picked up a quote from a book. They may have picked it up from artificial intelligence, but they didn't necessarily learn anything or comprehend anything. They're just regurgitating. Okay, and that regurgitation can go on and on and on and on, where people are believing that they have this genius mind, and they don't realize they're rambling. They don't realize that they're not comprehending. Why? Because the people that are listening to them are doing the same thing. Nobody is necessarily comprehending anything. They're just regurgitating, picking up what they've learned from, like I said, online, internet learning. A lot of them have not read a book. They may have read one chapter, or maybe, and so the cheating part of the academics has been going on for decades upon decades, possibly millennia. There's been this level of cheating where these so-called pedigree, these privileged so-called genius minds have been given the answers, have been coddled through. They didn't have to learn a goddamn thing, especially a lot of the presidents. That's quite obvious, especially now. They haven't read a book, but what they've had is these helpers around them who have been, like I said, coddling them, putting them through, trying to keep that certain name of pedigree, at the hierarchical structure. And it shows up, and it's showing up everywhere now, especially with the influencers, so-called quote-unquote influencers, who are under the age of 40. And they get billions, some of them get millions and billions of views because they're regurgitating, they're rambling. But the topics of discussion is what the young people want to talk about. They want to talk about makeup. They want to talk about, like I said, video games, these simulated war video games. The simulated reality that shows up on television. These games on television, all about war and battle. And some of the books that came out in I think it was early 2000s. These and they turn into trilogies, where they, somebody would write a book, and then all of a sudden, it's a feature film, a feature movie. That has been going on for decades upon decades, and so it did not allow the children that we have today, the 40s and under, to necessarily develop. They're, like I said, they have been fed these fantasies, these delusions, and they did not know how to distinguish the difference between the two. They didn't know how to figure out, okay, is this logical? Is this rational? Is this reasonable? We just got caught up in it, especially the so-called quote unquote, I own no rights to the word matrix. If that wasn't the most indoctrinated field reality, I don't know what was. that term of the matrix. And nobody's doing any of those skills and abilities in that movie. No one. But yet we are fascinated by it. People have written books. People have, and movies have been developed because of that. Saying that we live in a matrix. We live in an actual, genuine, bona fide reality. There is no matrix. There is no simulation. This is a real reality that we're wasting again, as we have for hundreds of thousands of years. And so we have, like, I can tell right away, life experiences are what is going to help you navigate through it all. But I was so impressed with like one of my relatives, when they were little toddlers, she knew that she needed to know how to read. And so she continually want one of us to read to her. I mean, I was almost like, I got exhausted because she wanted us to read to her hours upon hours a day. And she was like, she gravitated towards being read to. So I can remember ordering a lot of books for her, for all of them that, that were in my parents' house, that came through my parents' house. I would order books upon books upon books. And I would sit there as best I could and read to her. That's what, so that is what's missing from a lot of the children. I call them children, but the adults that are 40 years of age, in their 40s and under. A lot of them did not have that opportunity to get those type of sounds and tones from relatives. You need it from relatives too. You need to hear those sounds and tones from relatives. And then be able to contemplate and see how you can, build and develop your consciousness, build and develop your psyche. So I'm paying attention to a lot of that, and the damage has been done because as I said, but it's still a learning experience for me, at least. Something that I can witness, something that I can observe, and something that because I comprehended 100% what's happening. We have these pieces of people coming through with pieces of knowledge. They have pieces and it's broken knowledge. They say some fancy word and then, everybody's ears start perking up and da-da-da-da. But if you don't understand science, how can you know if someone's even talking to you about science? If you don't understand the math, when you don't know how to even add and subtract and multiply yourself, okay, if you don't understand and so it is annoying, but I can easily just disregard it because I hear, like I said, a lot of young people in their 20s, no offense, rambling about these high-tech things, even some in their 30s, but more so in their 20s, talking about these high-level thoughts, but yet they can barely wipe their ass properly. They're talking about, certain realities about biology, which they definitely do not understand. That's quite obvious. And so they're kind of like coming in with this broken knowledge and not really attempting to understand what genuine knowledge is. Does it make sense? Is it logical, rational, and reasonable? Is it reproducible? So they're getting all this attention online. A lot of them are good looking. That's the fatality of it all, because we see these people and they may be pleasing to the eye, so that means we believe that they are so highly intelligent, they're so all-knowing, everything points to it's a delusion and hallucination. Like there was this one so-called popular celebrity that was supposedly he supposedly knew everybody's future except his own, and he ended up with some type of brain damage. But he couldn't forecast that, but he can forecast your future, but he couldn't forecast his own. That he would come up with brain damage. I doubt he still does what he does, because eventually, because it's all performance, all that stuff is performance, because if you could, to so-called quote unquote read the future is basically just following patterns and behaviors and understanding, okay, is it logical, rational, and reasonable? Is it reproducible? Does the math add up? And so that's why a lot of these people are going to crush in their consciousness, and they're going to start losing brain cells because they're not actually thinking. They're just performance. It's going to be atrophy, and then they're going to create this man-made, self-created dementia because they're not thinking. They're just kind of performing and acting, and that's why so many actors and actresses kind of lose themselves into their field. They don't know who the hell they are. And so and a lot of people who don't know who the hell they are, they'll watch these people on TV performing. They don't realize these people are performing, and they believe that's reality. The Matrix is a performance. The Matrix is entertainment. It doesn't exist. But you have, again, millions upon billions of people who have followed this for decades upon decades. You even have these so-called, what do you call them? Spirituality teachers. I don't know what they call themselves anymore. Because, it's all, we're starting to use the Matrix, and trying to, simulate life via the Matrix. I fell for it too. I fell for it all too. I had to get myself out of those delusions and hallucinations and indoctrinations and realize, okay, that's not even real. It's not even reality. Some people have not left their couch, but yet they have all of these millions upon millions of followers, and they're not going to leave their couch because what? It benefits them to sit on their couch all day long, either playing video games or rambling about spirituality, rambling about growth and rambling about this and rambling about that, and they can barely wipe their ass, and they barely have a pot to piss in. So, but that's going to be up to you, the individual, to snap yourself out of that, indoctrinate yourself and realize, okay, this is, get out in nature. Nature will reveal to you what's really going on, and what's going on in the internet is anything but what's actually going on in reality, out in reality. Okay, so do yourself a favor. Save yourself. Save your consciousness. Do it now. Peace and love.